I'm a California girl who grew up in California, and then I am celebrating my third Christmas in Prague. LA is a great city. It's really where like dreams come true.
Everyone doing that job would like to do the job that you left from.
So that's like a big thing for me here is just, it's really sad hearing what everyone's dealing with healthcare in the US, and here it's just $800 for the cheapest Madonna concert ticket in Los Angeles, but I can get the best seats to see her in like Copenhagen for like $200. So she just like pulls my hair, and I thought she was just like pulling it because it was like, like blonde kind of curly hair. And she got scissors and she just like cut a piece of it. And then she just like threw it on the ground and like started like stamping on it. And I'm like, what? And I am like losing it. For me, happiness is having freedom. I think I have learned that I can do anything.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of the Whereabouts Tales podcast. In today's episode we have Mariko. What happens when you trade LA's red carpets for a global adventure? Culture shocks, career pivots and life lessons await. Don't miss the incredible story of reinvention and resilience that Mariko will share today. Like always, Mariko's contacts are linked in the show notes captured below. Enjoy. Hi Mariko, perfect.
Hi.
We are on.
You said my name perfectly.
Thank you so much. I think I have a natural talent with names. This is what my German teacher said. And if I can do it in German, I think I can own any language. Hello and thank you for doing this. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time. Could you please tell us something about you, about your background?
I am celebrating my third Christmas in Prague, and I'm still not used to this cold weather. I'm a California girl who grew up in California and then lived in Asia and India, so I'm not quite ready for this cold weather yet. So that's a little something about me. European winters.
I have to say your accent is amazing, and I think even if you wouldn't have told me you're a California girl, I would have known that you're a California girl because your accent is like there where it should be. Tell us how a California girl is getting into Prague through Asia, Mariko. What was the story? What spiked your interest to leave home? Because you are coming from California, the place where everyone wants to move to.
Exactly. So yeah, from California to Prague, had a few stops along the way. I'll just, dive right in. So I was living and working in Los Angeles. I was a culinary TV host, celebrity chef to a bunch of the big stars. And LA is a great city. It's really where like dreams come true. And I had set out to Los Angeles with this vision of what I wanted to do. And then I started to do that, and I'm like, okay, like I've kind of like I've hit that part of what I wanted to do. So now I wanted something totally, totally different. I was going through a divorce, like a bunch of those little things were happening. And I was just like, you know what? It's time for something new, something different. I had never actually traveled outside of the US before.
Wow,
so
that's a huge
exactly.
step.
Yeah, so let me just like backtrack a little bit. So I had never been out of the US. I think I got my passport when I was 35. So that was kind of wild. And I met a friend, and she had this rule of, hey, I need to spend my birthday each year in a country I have never been to. You just got divorced. Why don't you come with me? So I was like, okay. So I got a rush passport and went to Vietnam and spent a month touring Southeast Asia. And I had no idea. I just, kind of went along for the ride. And that was like, wow, there's an entirely different world out there. So for a few years, I just each year I would go travel for a month with my friend and go visit new places. And then after that, I, then I was kind of starting to feel like, okay, like I was doing all these big celebrity events. I had these great clients that, I've kind of maxed out of what I wanted to do in Los Angeles, and let me start exploring this whole other side of the world. So then one night, I was probably a little, had a few drinks or whatnot. I came home and I totally like rebranded my LinkedIn. And because I was doing all this like TV stuff. And so then I started like, and it was all like truthful about, highlighting, like at the time I was working on my PhD in corporate finance. No one knew that. I had been working like as a marketing consultant. So I just put all that on my LinkedIn. And then I started like instant applying to jobs in like Thailand, Vietnam, China. I was like, let's just see, where it will take me. And I ended up getting
I love that story. I love that story. So
yeah.
Most probably you match the time zones applying it during the night. Most probably you match the time zones of the country where you apply to.
Exactly. So, and I started getting interviews in like Singapore, Hong Kong, and then this one company in Vietnam, they're like, okay, we will hire you. This is how much we will pay you, but you have to start like next week. So I said, okay. So I just had my friend like, get rid of everything in my apartment. I went to Vietnam where this job was. I had nothing but one suitcase and my tennis bag and a laptop. And now that I'm a seasoned expat, I know that like when a company moves you overseas, they give you like a relocation package. They put you in a corporate hotel, apartment, like corporate all of housing, that stuff. Yeah. I ended up just buying my own like one-way ticket and was like, okay, I guess I like live and work in Vietnam right now.
So basically you took the one-way ticket with a pure intention to go and explore a different side of the world. Yeah. Like no question asked, no second. That's amazing. That's a hell of a story.
Yeah, I knew that the salary was good. Like that salary in Los Angeles, I would be a peasant. And you got to remember, like working in Los Angeles, like working in Hollywood for like really wealthy people, you don't actually get paid that well. So, so that's part of it. And the bills are so, expensive. I'm sure we'll start to talk about is like once you start, living outside of different countries, it's like, oh, my cell phone bill in Los Angeles was $200 a month. Now it's like unlimited for $30 a month, so you start to, see those differences. So yeah, so it was like, wow, this is, so they offer me a salary and I was like, oh, for this much I could be living pretty nicely and well, so I was like, why not?
It's always interesting. I had this discussion a few days ago. It's always interesting how the money are not the same money everywhere. Like the cost of living, it's always adapted to the salary. If the salary is big, the cost of living is big. If the salary is low, the cost of living is low. But I'm pretty sure that working for celebrities is not such a good paid job because everybody's there just to see them. And then the money that you get is the side effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is what I think, at least.
And after a point, you don't really care about working for celebrities because they're just regular people. Some are nice, some are, jerks. But, it's at the end of the day, it's still like your boss or like a client, it's, the allure fades fast. So I think for me, it was, a combination of just wanting to do something totally different. Like, let me go, I went from doing celebrity events to working in a fintech company in Vietnam, which is like very, rooms of like hundreds of people just like lined up in perfect rows and you have to be clock in at this time, clock out at this time, understanding like the different, culture and just, the way people work and stuff. So, um, yeah, so it's
What is
kind of that,
what is crazy? What is crazy? What I have to say is crazy. Everyone doing that job would like to do the job that you left from. And if you think about the craziness of the idea, I find it extremely interesting and extremely exciting. You arrived at the job. You've been already in Vietnam. That means you knew the prices. You knew somehow the
yeah.
world. Was still something different, let's say, from the demo version, because I always try to call the tourist experience like the demo version, and then when you move and work for there, you are actually living the complete full version. And did you still have surprises when you landed and you say, okay, but actually this is Vietnam, not the one that I've seen backpacking?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're, backpacking, when you're traveling, you're having beers and noodles at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're getting some really, €5 massages, you're just kind of hanging out. And then it's like, okay, now you're, traveling to work in one of those little scooters at, 8 o'clock in the morning. It's like a whole just different like life and routine. And then, and in Los Angeles, I did not have that. Like I would work like a couple days a week or, an evening. Now this was like going to a completely corporate schedule. So there was, that. And then there's also just the, when you move to anywhere in the world, like your first like year, however long, is just doing paperwork, bureaucratic paperwork, like, you know, health checkups, like all this different type of stuff. So it was just, you know, it was a lot.
How complicated it was to get the work permit and to get the papers to work in Vietnam as an American?
It was very easy, actually. So the company, they did it all for me, but I just got to go there on a tourist visa. They submitted everything. And then, yeah, I ended up getting like my residency card in a few days. It was very
Okay, so quite
easy.
easy.
Yeah.
And how is the process of finding homes, finding a home?
Oh, that was really easy because where I was living in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, there's like so much like new apartments. There's a lot of, it's growing really fast. So they're actually building up apartments faster than people can move into them. Whereas like now I live in Prague and it's such a small, it's such a small town. There's not the infrastructure of building all these apartment buildings, but then it's also popular to expats, so there's a very like disconnect, kind of here. So yeah, so in Vietnam it was easy. I was paying about 500-600 euros a month for like a penthouse apartment. This was 2016, and I could control all the music in the house, the blinds, everything from my phone. House help, that was the yeah. Yeah. No, that, and then just like before moving to Vietnam, like I was working with a lot of celebrities, helping them with their food prep and their cooking, like in the kitchen. And then when I moved to Vietnam, I actually had like housekeepers come in twice a day. I had a cook come in and like do all my food for me. So then that was like another part of it, is like getting used to just like that lifestyle.
I mean, nice experience, really nice experience. Did you manage to build a, let's say, a friends community in Vietnam as well, except your working colleagues?
Yes. So one of the things that I loved about living in Vietnam when I did, and I know it's like that now, is it's such a growing like tech scene, tech community. it's very expat friendly. So there's a lot of like digital nomads. There's just a lot of people that are like just living there, staying there, and working there. So my social calendar was always going to different tech events. So, some like Bitcoin meetup. I hosted a, machine learning and marketing thing like 8 years ago, so there was just a lot of different like workshops, community events. It was very like social around that like entrepreneur, like everyone like was trying to help each other, and it was just kind of and also it was a hub for so many Australians, like Europeans were there, Chinese. I mean, it was just, I felt like the whole world was kind of like congregating there at that time, and it was just
Interesting,
so it was
because
easy. It was easy.
that's not something which is really known about Vietnam. I mean, everybody's talking about backpacking in Vietnam, so doing the tourist part in South Asia. But I think that's an interesting piece of information.
Yeah.
So you stayed. How long were you in Vietnam?
I was there for 2 years. And
Okay.
so I was there for 2 years. Half of that time I worked for that company. And then the other half of it, I ended up freelancing on my own for some different companies there. Yeah, so one of the projects I was working on was one with the Vietnamese government. It was a travel tech conference. And I met someone at the conference. He was really cute. And we started chatting, and he had to go home. He lived in India, and we kind of kept chatting, and then we were like, hey, let's keep chatting. When can I see you next? And he was going to be in Bangkok for a work trip. So I ended up going to Bangkok and meeting him, and and yeah,
Things happen.
yeah, so things happen. I ended up moving to India to be with him. Yeah. So then after Vietnam, I was in India for 4 years. Half of that was during the pandemic. So that was just, oh, I,
Crazy, crazy.
and
Also working there, or still freelancing.
I was trying to freelance. I was trying to work there. Me and India on the financial, like on the job front, didn't work out that well.
Okay.
Part
Okay.
of it, I I met someone, I moved there. I was, expecting the same ease as doing it in Vietnam. I was naive. And I had read all these articles about expats in India are paid the highest. And so, I was just expecting everything to just work out fine. When I had already moved there, the prospects of me being like a, high paid expat, that didn't exist, because the reason they pay you so much is because it's kind of I forget, it's a type of, it kind of tax, because it's going to be very difficult. So, for
Okay.
example, they'll give you like a 3-year management contract. They will put you in, like the fanciest apartment, give you a car, give you a driver. They will give you like every comfort to make it bearable for living there.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Mm-hmm.
when I moved there, um, I did not have that. So I was going out and interviewing for jobs and all of that. But it was very difficult. There was a lot of discrimination. Um,
I wanted to ask this because I think they still have a, let's say, a problem. I don't want to say a problem, but I think the discrepancy between women working, especially in tech, and men
yeah.
working in these areas, I think it's big. But was the only the let's say the woman discrimination, or it was also the American discrimination?
So it was, it's funny because companies would bring me in for interviews to parade me around the office to be like, oh, we're going to hire an American. So they kind of used it for that. But, from the discrimination side, it was like, you know, I'm an unmarried woman, like in India. Just the whole story just, didn't really, vibe well. It was, they would ask me my age, like straight out. Oh, well, when are you having children? You're not having children? Oh, well, you should start having children. So it's kind of that like, oh, when are you getting married? We need to know your wedding date because you're going to be taking 2 years off to get married. And I'm like, what kind of world is, so some of those, you know, cultural nuances. So at the time, it was very difficult because I was like, "No, don't worry about that. I'm not going to take 2 years off to get married. Don't worry about the kid. Don't worry about this. Don't worry, And it was just, so a lot of it was just me getting really frustrated about just, how everything was happening. But then there's also the part of me that knows that this is just, these are the cultural nuances. These are the different things that I have to, you know, get used to. So yeah.
It's a huge cultural difference, and if you think about the culture where they are growing in and they are used to, and for
Hmm.
sure when you are over 30 and you're not married, for sure you have a problem. And I think it's
Yeah.
not only on the woman's side, it's on the man's side absolutely the same. And I think that's the biggest fit problem. I actually never heard. I'm honest with you. I never heard about someone who tried to get a job in India.
Mhm.
So
You know what another interesting thing about getting a job in India is we would talk about salaries, and they're like, we're gonna hire you, and these are like big companies, and they're like, we're gonna hire you as like chief marketing officer. And I'm like, okay, and we're talking about salary, and they're like, oh, we won't pay you for the first year.
wow.
And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, yeah, we just, we'll pay you next year. And like, I would get these stories, like the same offers would happen from different companies. And then I talked to one of my friends who was in like recruiting in India, and they're like, yeah, like everyone who's talented got their experience and their education from abroad. So to do that, they had a lot of money. So to work at a company, let's say like I don't know, Netflix or whatever, um, the people that have the experience to get there might not necessarily need the money.
This is a hard story because this is really a hard story. I mean, at the end, of course, most probably they are doing it for stock options, and so on. So who knows? But
Yeah.
still, as a basic idea, you think about you're going there, you want to get the job, and then they say, okay, but 1 year is
Hmm.
the test period in which you do it for free, and
Hmm.
this is hard. Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah. So it was difficult, but through that it was okay. What's the opportunity here? So I started working with American brands who wanted to understand India, like entering in the Indian market, and then Indian brands from India who wanted to do more stuff in the US. So I did that. In the meantime, I got my certification in Ayurveda because when white girls go to India, what do? They either learn Ayurveda or yoga. So I learned Ayurveda. Yeah.
Correct, correct.
So, and then I started teaching classes, like online classes during the pandemic. But one thing I do want to talk about is something that I learned about being an expat, like depending like what country you're from. Um, I learned a lot about that during the pandemic. So I don't know if that's like you want to talk about
Absolutely.
that. So, and I never make a point to talk ill of like governments or anything like that. So I will just, kind of put that out there. I try to be as neutral as possible. But the US's response was so horrible that I looked at my friends from all these other countries and it made me sick. So, pandemics happening, all these other countries, Germany, France, Italy, if you're a citizen of that country and you need to get out of India, because India was like one of the worst places in the world. It was, I don't want to go into the detail. It was just really bad. And I can't, I'm grateful I made it out alive. But every other country was offering like, repatriation flights to get citizens back to the countries. But you had the option to stay. And then the US, it was just, it was chaos. There was no, they didn't know when it was happening. People were trying to get on the list. What happened is the US ended up charging to take this flight, but they did not know actually how much they were going to charge. So I had some friends who got bills after the fact for $300 US, some for 12,000 US, just, like finally US could come and like take you home, but there's none organization, right? So that was just chaos. Then when the vaccine started coming out, so in India, you couldn't really get a vaccine if you were a foreigner at the time. And Germany, France, Italy, all these other countries, you could go to the embassy and go get whatever vaccinations were being offered in your country. And in the US, for the US one, all their phone numbers were like, do not, disconnected. Like all their online chats, everything was just off. So in all the expat boards of like Americans, people are trying to, how can we get vaccines? How can we get any of this stuff? And it was just like, we were just like left stranded. I had friends that were like, yeah, they're offering, this vaccine in France. So I was able to go down to the French embassy, get everything, so that was just the one thing I felt that in a time of, crisis that the things are supposed to be there to kind of help citizens abroad was not there.
This is so interesting. This is I have to say it's a crazy story because everyone is looking up towards the United States because this is what we learn always, that they take care about the citizens, they take care no matter where you are and so on. But this is really a horror story because at the end, the government failed you when you needed it the most, right? So you needed the support, you needed the let's say either the possibility to leave, either the possibility to get a vaccine. But did you? Where were you in India? In which city?
For the first half of it, I was in Mumbai because that's where I had moved. That's where, my partner and I were living. And then halfway through COVID, we moved to Goa. So it was a little remote beach town. And the reason being was we were I couldn't get vaccinated. There weren't a lot of people around there. So it was like, okay, well, at least we'd have like beaches and like places to like be outside in nature. In Mumbai, we couldn't really do that. And then just not working as much. The rent in Goa was like half the price. So it was just, kind of a no-brainer. Just, needed to kind of be away from people when we figured this thing out.
Correct. But the US embassy, was it in Bombay?
Yes, it was.
And you had no option to get in contact with them, like to try to get support from them? Nothing.
Nope.
This is unbelievable.
Like, yeah, like unanswered Facebook messages, emails, So, so that's, and I don't want to talk too ill, but no, it's just
it's painful.
It's painful, but also it's like it's kind of gets back to that grass is always greener, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
stuff like that. Like how you're
You're
saying, like,
correct. Yeah.
usually people think like, and, there's a lot of good things, like everyone else's country, it's just, I don't know
Yeah.
how to say it right now. I don't know how to,
Yeah, but I do understand what you mean. So at the end, you always wish for the thing that you don't have. That's in our
yeah,
human nature. So
yeah,
what you have, it's boring.
yeah.
And I have to say you are the best example in this case because you moved out of California. So I mean, that
Well,
cannot be cooler than that. We think.
so I guess that segues into how I moved to Czech Republic.
Exactly.
Okay, so we were living in Goa, and it was nice. Like, imagine just waking up every morning and going to the beach and white sandy beaches and swimming in the warm ocean, and it was just bliss.
Why would you
Uh,
leave? Why would you leave? Why?
And I will tell you exactly that moment it was Christmas Day, and it would have been Christmas Day 4 years ago. 4 years ago now? 3 years ago? I have to look at my calendar. I can't remember. But it was Christmas Day, sitting on the beach, having breakfast. I was writing in my journal, and it was like, this is so beautiful. This is so perfect, but this is retirement. Like, you just, like, all of our friends there, we met the most amazing people, but everyone's like, mid 30s, early 40s, and it's just like, okay, like, you can live a fabulous life. You don't have to make that much money. It's just like everything's just like chill. It's like a Portuguese colony, so everyone's like sossegado, just like chill. And we were kind of like, wow, we're not ready to be retired. We need something more. Like, we're just, if we stay here too long, it's going to be easy to get sucked in.
For sure. For sure.
And then also after COVID and everything, I was missing my family so much. The fact that I hadn't seen my family in 4 years at this point, to travel to see them, it was just so much effort. My grandma was getting up there in ages. So my husband, he's like, okay, let me start looking out for some jobs in Europe, like looking through his network of people, and started reaching out to a few people and ended up having a job offer. And it was so funny because he had actually been applying for jobs for a while. And so there's a few other cities that we were kind of had our hearts set on moving to. And then the opportunities didn't come through, and we were heartbroken. But yeah, and one of the options that we had to move was Prague. And neither of us had been to Czech Republic before, but we're like, okay. I thought it'd be cool to spend Christmas somewhere where it's, where there's like snow.
And
You
it
know,
was.
sitting
And
on
it
the
was
beach.
for 2 years.
Yeah. So, sitting on the beach when I'm like, oh, it's Christmas Day. I wish I was, having a white Christmas. I just want a white Christmas in Europe. And now you're spending like your white Christmas in Europe, and you're like, please get me to that beach.
Again, the same story. Like you always wish for what you don't have anymore.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So you got to Prague.
I'm very sad that I'm not on a white sandy beach right now. It's like,
I can imagine. But as far as I know, Prague is a very international city and it's quite welcoming. How was the landing experience in Prague?
I think the landing experience was good. Um, it was good. So let me just backtrack. It was about a year before we moved here. So just husband being Indian, visas take, like, I have an American passport, so that's a lot easier for me. Him, it just takes a lot longer. So we knew that we were going to move here for almost a year. And I spent a lot of that time on all the expat boards. And so, you're reading everyone's experiences online. And I actually was mentally prepared for the worst. I saw a lot of complaints. It's impossible to find a place. The landlords are hard. Bosses are hard. People like everything I read online was just like so negative. So I kind of came in like I like to come in with an open mind. Just, I need to figure out things for myself. But at the same time, I was just like, okay, we will be here for a couple years, make some money, then we'll figure it out. Okay. So that was just kind of the mindset. And then when we got here, everything was incredible and amazing. And like the people we met were amazing. The landlords we met were amazing. The house we found is amazing. It's just like everything just really aligned. And it also helps because he had, like a corporate relocation. So they help you with the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. So that just, also kind of made it easier. But yeah, like the experience moving here was like, even if I tell people now just like how good of experience that we've had, people say that I'm lying. So I think it's, also just part of like whatever the vibrations you put out there, like you can't come into a new place and just have all this like negative mindset, right? So
I think there are always two things. First of all, you got the input from those expat groups when you've seen only negative
bad
things.
news.
That means what?
That's bad news.
Exactly. And what happened? You lower your expectations. You went inside and having zero expectation, maybe minus, and then at the end it was good. It was better. It was even better than it was. But your feeling is that it was a perfect landing because the expectations were like under earth. Let's say it like this.
Yeah.
How was the process? You said you had some help with the paperwork in Prague, but. How was the process still, the bank account opening, getting let's say a working permit, then a residence card and so on? Was that complicated? Was that time consuming? Even though you had support, you still saw how they happened.
Yeah, so again, my experience was a lot easier because I had a company to do it. So basically they were paid to do it. Excuse me. To put things into perspective, let's say you were to do it yourself, like go through the effort and do everything yourself. It would cost maybe like 200-300 euros to do the whole process. If you have an agency to do it for you, it's going to be like 700. But then you don't have to deal, it means like someone will pick you up. They will take you there with a translator. They will do everything. They just, like they do everything and stuff like that. So it was relatively easy. So, and his was a lot harder because I'm on like a, whatever spouse visa.
I mean, you have an advantage by having an American passport. Yes. Your passport is opening a lot of doors. Like you don't have.
And if I want, and I know that if I just wanted to do it all on my own with my U.S. passport, they've made it a lot easier. So I know that Czech Republic, they are trying to attract more, different expats from different countries. They just published a list earlier this year trying to ease the visa process for like Americans, Australians, Israelis, like a few different countries. So
amazing journey, Mariko. Amazing one. I'm pretty sure that except the accent, which is still a Californian, you cannot lose it. I think it's for life. I think your, let's say, way of being, it's different since you start US. And you got a lot from the local cultures. Is there something that still stays in your memory as a local custom in one of the countries that you visited that you learned to appreciate during your trip, or even to take with you?
That is a very good question. I would have to say taking off your shoes inside the house.
Wow. That's a big one. That's a big one for an American.
Yes. I remember my first trip to Vietnam, like I was there as a tourist, and then I came back to Los Angeles and I had my carpet steam cleaned and I got some cute little slippers and I'm like, we are not wearing shoes inside the house anymore. And then I had some friends come over and they're like, we're not taking off our shoes in the house. And actually I told them, if you do not take your shoes off in the house, you can't come in. And then they left and I never saw them again.
That's a good one. That's a
Yeah.
good one. But
So
it's a small. At the end, it's a yeah. I would say for every European, it's a small thing. But I know how big of a deal is in the US this
yeah.
with the shoes, and that's why I think it's a big deal.
I think one of the cultures, the things that's just prevalent right now is we've learned about lifting.
Oh, German style.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I didn't live in Germany, but it happens here too. So that's become like a new habit. Um, just like little things about like in Vietnam, I got very used to having noodles and rice for breakfast. So that, just kind of like my meals, like just little thing, like the way I use utensils, like, how I eat with Indian utensils, like, spoon and fork. It just, like those little nuances and stuff. But I think the biggest, thing when we went back to go visit my family in the US and we're trying to take off our shoes to go inside the house, and they're like, "Oh, you can leave them on," and we're just like
Weirdos.
it feels weird. Like, what do you mean? Like, or it's just like awkward. It's like I'm walking on like lava or something. It's like how, just like those little things.
That's interesting. So interesting. You said about food. You said about noodles. I think that's important. Do you have something from US that you are missing in terms of food?
No, not really. It's funny because when I first moved to Vietnam, every trip back to the US, I would bring back suitcases full of snack foods, different ingredient, like, there is something I have to have from the US. There's one thing, and I will get back to that in a second. But no, like in Vietnam, I'd always bring over like so many like snacks and like familiar things. And then over time, that just kind of diminished. Like, I think also part of it is whenever I see the labels of the American ingredients, like of the foods, it scares me. Like I have boxes of things that, I brought back and I'm like, these are the things that are, illegal in the EU. Do I really want to have this like cupcake fix?
It's great. Due to my job, I've been a few times already in the US. Also, I've been with my wife and kid this year. We had a road trip on the East Coast. You would say on the wrong
Amazing.
coast, but on the East Coast, from New York to Miami and back. But what I realized that honestly, in every product that you can buy from the store, there is tons of sugar. I never knew that it's allowed and it's possible to have that much sugar in everything. And I have my guilty pleasure from US. It's the peanut butter cups. Reese.
Oh, those are so good.
Yes. I have my guilty pleasure. In the meantime, they are here as well, and they are not that sweet as in the US. Sorry, I was interrupting you. You're saying that you still miss something from US.
No, and it's funny because in the US it's like you can find Reese's peanut butter cups here, but they're the like European version, so they're made with real sugar. They're not as sweet. Whereas the ones in the US, they use high fructose corn syrup. So everything there is high fructose corn syrup. But
correct.
yeah.
And here you can buy let's say the bite size, the normal size of the cup. Like you can buy two cups, which in US is not possible. You either buy half of kilo or you don't buy it.
Yeah, totally. It's funny. I actually have a bag of like Reese's peanut butter like chocolate chips in my pantry. It's
Okay, yeah, that's so it's something that you enjoy as well. And what's you
yeah,
said you have
yeah.
one product that you need to have from US. What's that one product? I need to know.
Um, it is my cold medicine. So I told you that I had the flu right now. Like I mean, like I had the flu for like a week. I had a cold. I am going to show you what it is. Like if anyone is traveling and they're like, "Can we bring you something?" I'm like, "Yes, actually, let me like Amazon it to your house." And let's see, it's in my secret stash. Alka Seltzer Severe Cold. And you just like the little tablets, you drop them in water and they fizzy tab. And they have like a nighttime one and a daytime one. So the nighttime one knocks you out, the day, the good stuff. And then the daytime one like keeps you up. And then these are like just the middle of the road ones that, they're fine. So this is the one thing that everyone brings back, and like people try this and they're like, this stuff is the best. Like this is like the only one of those like medicines. So my family came to visit this summer. It was their first trip out of the US. They finally came to visit, so that was exciting. So I said, I sent them the pictures and I'm like, do you want me to send it on Amazon or do you want to, pick it up for me at the Target or whatnot? And they're like, oh, we'll pick it up for you because we have some coupons. So I tell them, send them pictures of what I want. And then they come back with the wrong ones. They came back with
Oh,
all these boxes and they were like, these ones are on sale. And it's like, so now my supply is getting very
okay,
low. Someone please come visit me.
okay,
But I just thought that, and it's so stupid. It's just that, that one little
no,
thing, and
it's
I
not.
can't find
No,
it. Yeah.
I have to confirm your story. So look, I was first time in the US in 2017. I think it was 2017, and
Mhm.
I was for work there. I was for 3 weeks there, and I got sick, and I went to Walmart, I think, and I just bought a bottle of night stuff. I don't
Mhm.
remember the brand. It doesn't really matter the brand. The way in which that medicine knocked me out and made me better by the next morning, I
Yeah.
haven't experienced in my life. And coming
Yeah.
home, I brought a bottle of nighttime. I think it's called night. It was nighttime flu or something like this, but it was also from
Mhm.
seltzer. That's why I remember it. A bottle of nighttime, and we had it in the house for about 1.5 years. And when my wife discovered it, she said, we have to go back, and next time when we go back we buy at least four. And you have to imagine
Yeah.
two idiots coming from US, from New York, with four of those bottles in the luggages, and we thought, okay, we hope they don't think we do drugs. We don't. We just love that thing. So I do fully understand you
Mhm.
because it's so powerful. Of course, most probably it's not good to take a lot and so on and all those
Mhm.
budgies, but it doesn't matter. It fixes you. That's the
Yeah.
most important. That's why I
Well,
completely
I
understand you.
mean, exactly. So yeah, I was sick this past week and I lived off of that. Luckily, I still have some of my private stash. But they have to make over-the-counter drugs like that in the US because it's not like anyone can really go to the doctor.
That's a different one. Yeah. I was thinking when you said about the flights, I was thinking about the flights is like the health insurance. You go to the doctor, you never know how much you pay for it. So it was the same with the flights back home.
Exactly. So, so that is also, so that's like a big, big thing for me here is just, it's really sad hearing what everyone's dealing with healthcare in the US, and here it's just, it's pretty
Mariko,
remarkable.
you said about your family that they visited you this
Hmm.
year, which I think it's amazing. I would like to know what was their reaction. First of all, when you told them that you were leaving the US, and second of all, through all this time when they realized you might not go back.
So when it very first happened, it happened so quickly that there was no time to process it. It was just it just happened really quick, and I don't think they really realized what was, obviously, like, are you sure, and all of that. But I've always been one to kind of, dance to the beat of my own drummer, so they say. I think, like, they know I'm not coming back, but I think the thing that shocks them the most when, they ask my husband, like, oh, are you going to try to get a green card? He's like, why would I try to get a green card? Just that, like, because that's like the dream. Everyone, it's like, oh, you want to marry an American, being an Indian marrying an American for like a green card. That's like, the thing like movies are made out of, right? And, and him just being like, I don't see the value. Like, not seeing the value, but also it's just like, to get a green card, you have to live there for a long time.
Correct.
And we're like,
Correct.
that does not sound fun. So, yeah, but I think it's, the just initial shock of like, what do you mean you don't want to live here? And that's, the longer I've been away, some of the differences are they're getting more like alarming. Like, I don't want to say alarming, but it's just the different in like mentality and just like work culture. Let me just like share an example, right? Like in the US, you have like 14 days of combined vacation and sick time. So if you're sick, it's just that whole thing. We don't need to talk about that, right? And I know people here that if they have like jobs that are like stressing them out, their doctors can prescribe them to go hang out at a wellness resort for like a week, like 3 weeks. You're getting work paid for. You're going to go hang out at like a day spa, sit in some mineral baths, and your insurance will pay that for you. And it's like, fortunately, like, I don't want to say fortunately, but this last winter I got really sick and I didn't have my Alka-Seltzer cold and flu medicine. So I was like off of work for like weeks and got my salary. Doctors like called in. It was like no problem. I don't have to worry about anything. I didn't feel guilty for not working.
That's a huge difference. That's the company that I work for has a subsidiary in the States, and there was at one moment the discussion of me moving there when I realized that 10 plus, I think they have 15 PTO days a year. 15, sorry, not 50, 15, and maybe 5-6 sick days. And if I think that here I have 30 PTO days in the year, then I just think, okay, what's the benefit? Okay, I might be making more money. My wife would not work anymore. I most probably would need to pay more for kindergarten and so on. So no,
Yeah.
it makes no sense. The you said that they realized you are not going back, which is, I think it could be painful. Did your relationship with them changed in the period when you are not home, or would you say it remained the same?
Well, I definitely feel like I talk to them a lot more. Like I talk to my mom like twice a day. So, I'm on the phone with my family like quite often, actually. I just don't see them as often. When I lived in Los Angeles, they would come down for a weekend. I would see them during the holidays, so that was just more accessible. But, we talk a lot and whatnot. And we're trying to plan more trips. So, yeah. And it's also hard for me to, it's hard for me to go back and visit too, because it's also just, your lifestyle is different. You're used to walking. You're used to, not being afraid of getting shot. There's all those kind of things happening. So
Um,
I don't
two
have to
things.
drink bottled water. I can drink, yeah,
Tap water, yeah, exactly. Two things
yeah.
that I have to say. I was negatively impressed in the US. I love US. I have to say, first thing first, I have to say I love US, and I think one day I most probably will go and live there for a certain amount of time because of course, it's a
Okay.
cliche. It's everything that I've seen in all the movies, for sure. But I still love it. I admit it, and I know that one day I will live there for sure, for a few months, maybe a year. But one thing that impressed me in a negative way is that with walking, I tried to run outside, and I realized that it's physically not possible because you don't have more than 500 meters of sidewalk that you can actually use. So it's either you go in the gym and do something in the gym, but you cannot do anything outside, like in the fresh air.
So it's interesting you say that because I watched, I'll have to find it, but it was like a news program that talked about how how capitalism in the US has redesigned like urban infrastructure. So, for example, like in Europe, it's very easy for us to be able to walk, take public transit. Whereas in the US, they make it so you have to drive, like you have to get into your car, you have to consume. And some of the examples they were talking about was with this like urban planner who was talking about when they designed like shopping malls. So this one person was saying like, the mall is in my backyard. I should just be able to go to the mall that's like right in my backyard, but you actually have to get out, you have to go up like 3 kilometers to like go turn at the light, this whole thing. So they make it that you have to, and plus then once you're out you're going to get more things because you have a car to put it in, so it's all just kind of designed to make people shop more, spend more time in the cars. And then the other part of it is taking away things like nature, outdoors, and then repackaging it and selling it. Like in the US, you want to be active, you have to have a gym membership.
And this is something which is something that it was hard for me to understand. Like the fresh, the getting the feeling of fresh air, the Lüftung, like that you said before, which I learned in Germany as well because I didn't know before. But this is something that you should have outside. I love going outside in the morning because it's so quiet, nobody's outside. You can hear the nature. You can, as Depeche Mode was singing, you can enjoy the silence.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely, that's the exact expression, but that's something I couldn't do in the US, unfortunately.
Yeah. Um, hey, speaking of Depeche Mode, let me talk about another reason why I'm enjoying living in Europe right now compared to the US. Um, the accessibility to concerts and shows and performances. One of the things that I appreciate is
Is
that,
that
like
is that
Ticketmaster, they have, like their consumer rights, so they can't charge all these extra fees. In the US, if you want to go to a concert, you're paying almost as much as the concert ticket and these different like Ticketmaster processing fees and taxes. So I've actually had friends who are like, oh, it's $800 for the cheapest Madonna concert ticket in Los Angeles, but I can get the best seats to see her in like Copenhagen for like 200. So it's cheaper for them to fly to Copenhagen to go to a concert. I know a lot of people that did that with Taylor Swift too. So I did go see Depeche Mode last year, but
this is
it
mind
makes it a
blowing.
lot more like
This is
accessible to go to shows here, I feel like.
This is mind blowing. I developed a passion for country music, for this new country wave, and I've seen that they have this CM Country Music Awards Fest, which is happening somewhere in May. And I
Hmm.
was searching for tickets because I said, okay, I want to do it once in my lifetime. And they charge
Hmm.
about 1,600 euros for 2 days of concerts. it's just insane.
Yeah.
It's just insane, and all the stadiums are full. It's
Yeah.
just crazy. Okay. Um, Mariko, I think I have a curiosity that I developed during our discussion. I need to ask you what's the origin of your name. And I don't know if you want to share it, but I'm extremely curious now.
Um, okay, so it's not my birth name.
Okay.
It was when I was a little girl. I spent a lot of time with my grandpa. He had served over in Japan, so he spent a lot of time in Japan. And he used to call me his little like Mariko Amekodommo, like his, Mary sweet child. And it just kind of stuck. And he was the one who kind of got me interested in different cultures. So, he'd show me pictures. He had like a pair of chopsticks in a bowl that he brought back from Japan in the, I guess 40s, 50s. And yeah, just, that's kind of how I started getting interested about, different cultures and different foods and going to the library and reading books. And yeah. So then when I got older, it
Really
was,
nice.
yeah. And then when I was older, when I went to university, I was studying broadcast. I was on all the radio stations at my university, and I was like, hey, I need like a fun radio name. And yeah, so I went with the name that my grandpa used to call me.
That's another interesting story. That's another interesting story. I think it's so cool, and I think he would be extremely happy to see that you use the name. And it's also an interesting name. I have to say, it's an interesting name. The reason why I asked you is because but there is a Hungarian name which sounds it's spelled somehow in the same way. But it sounds different, and that's why I didn't try the Hungarian way of saying it. I tried the Japanese because it looked like this, and I match it somehow.
What's the Hungarian way to say it?
The Hungarian way to say it is Mariko, and most probably
Mariko.
you know this "o." Maybe you heard this "o," which is kind of typical Hungarian, Austrian. Let's say it like this, and this is like Mariko. Like it's a different way of saying Maria. So Mary, the Mary name is like the small one is Mariko. Amazing trip during in this amazing trip that you had. I think it's impressive. I'm listening. I'm listening, and I have less words to say. But please tell me. Of course, there is a. I think there is a. You start with the perspective of life when you leave home because you want to do some travel, and I see that you have an extremely positive attitude. Is this positivity that you have something that you always had, or is something that you got during this trip that you had?
That's a very good question. I've been pretty positive for just as long as I can remember. Like back in the day, I read the book The Secret, and I just remember it's always better to just have like a good mindset about things, and then I could also, I think it became very obvious when I was in Los Angeles, because you got to think about, you're surrounded by all these, everyone wants to be an actor, a model, cooking show host. Everyone wants to do all this stuff. And there's half of the people are there just, it's all going to work out. Like, this is just part of the process, and think positive and manifest and all this. And then there's the people that just have, like, the world is against me. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not rich enough. I don't have this. I don't have that. It's always just, and those people just got it like exhausting. Like, that attitude was just exhausting. So, I've always just tried to be as, positive about things as possible, because, why not?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's nice. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the amount of experiences that you have had in the last years helped you also see the positive things, the positive side of everything. Because at the end, you have to focus on the good things and you have to let go of the bad things, because otherwise
Yeah.
you stay too much in the past. Um, is there something that you learn about yourself, that you think you learn about yourself, because of the trip, that you wouldn't have learned about yourself staying back home in the US?
You mean my first initial trip outside of the US, or just
No,
being,
I
like,
mean
just
general.
being in general? I think I have learned that I can do anything. Like, I have I have complete confidence in myself that I can basically do whatever I need to do, and if I don't know the answers, I can figure it out. Just, it's you have to like, you know, when I first moved to Czech Republic, I saw this t-shirt that I bought. I never buy shirts that have words on it, but it said choose your hard. And so I saw that and it was like, okay, you get to like choose the hard that you have in your life. And so for me, it was just like every time something hard was starting to happen, it's just like, okay, well, yeah, that's hard, but there's something like better at the end of it. So I just, kind of learned not to let myself get too like bogged down when things don't go my way, or, and it's taken a lot of work. I'm not 100%, but it's, I don't think of things being like the end of the world anymore. I'm like, I can do anything. I'm resilient. I've been through COVID in India. I've like traveled to all these countries. I've dealt with I've dealt with being in Sri Lanka and having a coconut tree fall on me and going to emergency rooms. Like I've figured out like all those things. So it's just, like it just gives me that like confidence that I can, get through difficult situations in ways that others might not.
Absolutely, I can only understand, and I can only believe that's something that you realize that nothing is impossible. Like everything is just a matter of time and a matter of solutions.
Hmm.
Um, I see around me, and I'm also guilty about that. Or why not being honest? That you have this need of doing things. And I see in the colleagues, I see it in myself. You have the need of doing things to make the others happy. Like you have the need of to do things to get the acceptance of the ones around you. I think in your case, this is something that doesn't exist because the people around you are constantly change. What motivates you to move on? What motivates you to do the things that you do?
Wow, that's a very loaded question. I mean, in the sense that so I think, God, that was a really good question. No, so I think for me, I've the thing I've had to learn is I can only really control like what's around me, and the and the and the people that want help.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know? Um, like I feel because I've seen so much. I've done so much. It's like I always, like, for a while, I was always trying to impart my wisdom on people, family, friends, about like, oh, well, it could be like this. It could be like this, and it's like, I know I'm right. I know I have the answers because I know all the options out there. I'm also a very like data driven person. So I can, logically, like, make statements about things. But it's like people will never figure out things until they've like walked in my shoes or they've seen it for themselves, right? And everyone's own journey is very like, you know, personal. So, one thing I've just had to learn is like, the only thing I can really just like focus on right now is like my, myself and my immediate little bubble. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, because actually and I think that's the most important things that we all forget about is to focus on the most important person that
Hmm.
matters for you, and that's you and your small
Hmm.
bubble that you have around you. But thank you for this. Um, I want to get some funny stuff inside. Uh, I want to hear how the are you learning the language in Prague?
Um, I've I have failed beginner Czech 3 times. I am committed to start it again. My husband, he's been very consistent with classes, so he's doing really well. I think it has been a struggle for me. The other part of it too is, he knows like 4 other languages already. So him picking up another language is easy. Like other Europeans, like, you already know like a couple of English, your language, maybe another language. So that part of the brain works differently. Like I'm here and I'm, like practically like mid 40s, like trying to learn new languages. And it's just not like, coming to me as fast. So and also Czech is one of the most difficult languages in the world. So
I'm in Germany, so I know what you mean.
yeah, yeah. Like what did we get ourselves into?
I, took 10 years. I can speak. I can get
Yeah.
along. I'm okay, but it will never be perfect, and I know that. And I have accepted that for me, and I said, okay, I'm getting along. I managed to work, so I'm okay with that. Um,
Yeah.
do you have a story? No, it doesn't have to be from Czech Republic, but do you have a story, a funny story from your let's say from your intermediate stations as well, uh, about maybe about a lost in translation topic, maybe about something that you misunderstood, and it was like it went completely the other way as it should.
Oh gosh. I know I have a lot of those stories. One time when I was in one time when I was in Vietnam, I was going to like the front desk of my building to like, see if there was any like the maid left a key for me or something like that. And there was this woman, like this older woman at the counter, and she's just like, and starts like yelling stuff at me. And then she just like grabs my hair. And this is when I still had like blonde hair. So I had like a short period of time that I did not have pink hair. I've had pink hair for over 20 years, but this was like in Vietnam, I had some blonde hair. So she just like pulls my hair, and I thought she was just like pulling it because it was like, like blonde kind of curly hair. And she got scissors and she just like cut a piece of it. And then she just like threw it on the ground and like started like stamping on it. And I'm like, what? And I am like losing it. Like, what happened? So I'm there like causing a scene, screaming. This woman's screaming at me. The security guard comes. They're these little like Vietnamese men. They're trying to like, like no one knows like what's going on. So then this young guy came and he's trying to translate, do the whole thing. And apparently like the curly hair was a bad omen. And so she was trying to get rid of like the bad omen. And then I talked to one of my other like Vietnamese friends, and she's like, yeah, she was just old school. Like, you want to have like nice straight hair.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And then, like one time, and then I had this really nice maid, like really nice maid. And she would do like my cooking and do some grocery shopping for me, do some food prep. And I kind of just trusted her to go grocery shopping. And then she kind of started like pushing the envelope, like bringing like really fancy ingredients, like just different like fruits and veggies and things, thinking I might like it. Like, oh, here's some like a really nice like chicken or something. Like she would bring like a whole chicken with the head and everything. And then one day she brought some California grapes. So she had seen it at the fruit market, and it was like, one of those little plastic clamshells, California grapes, and it said California, and she knew I was from California. And so she was so excited to like get these grapes. And then she would just give me her, the receipts at the end of the week, and I would pay her. And then it was so expensive. It was just like stupid expensive. And then I'm, trying to like figure out like, what is it? And then she didn't speak English. So she had to call her daughter who spoke English to like, talk to me. And it was the grapes. And the grapes, because they were like California imported grapes. So this little thing of, grapes ended up being like 100 or something euros. Like it was like, and stuff. So, and I was, and I couldn't be upset because, like that's how much I pay her a month to like, so it's like I had to pay it, but it was just like, I'm like eating them and they weren't even good grapes. And just like, you California grapes, this is like, so like, little things like that. Yeah.
Cool. That's a nice one. I love if we talk about California stuff. I love California pistachio. So that's my favorite one.
Yes.
Is there a? I would always start with this because you're coming from California. Most probably you already tried the exotic fruits there. But is there something that you tried in Vietnam, in Prague, that you said you thought when you were back in US you'd never try? I'm not talking about food because food is a different topic, but I'm talking about local fruits, local vegetables that you think, okay, this I thought I will never have this.
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, you know, Actually, I have a good answer to that, which is one of those things that when my mom came to visit, she was also like, I cannot believe I am eating this here. Bread.
I was expecting, I don't know what, but I wasn't expecting bread.
No, because in the US it's like, everyone's gluten free because the gluten like really bothers you. Like even when my husband went to the US, he's like, oh, I can't eat gluten in the US. And you start to understand because it's the type of wheat, the way they process the wheat. So basically like everyone in the US is like, not eating gluten. And like my mom, she hasn't had a piece of bread in ever. When I lived in LA, like I didn't have like a piece of bread in like 10 years because it would make me sick. And now living in Europe, it's just, you go and like bread is a part of life. Like you have, your fresh, like good sourdough all day. And so like my mom comes to visit and she's like, oh, I never thought I would be eating bread. Oh, this is really good bread. Oh, I can eat like like a 2 kilo loaf of bread and I still, my stomach doesn't hurt. So that.
In the previous episode, I talked to a really kind human being. He's originally from Mexico, but living in Switzerland, and he actually said the same. He actually said the same. He said, "Man, you have no idea how good bread is here in Europe. You have no idea."
Yeah. Yeah. And on the other flip side of that, because I'm a California girl, like trying to find the good like Mexican tortillas. So I do. That's a hard one, but I have a place for that. I got the hookup.
Yeah,
So can I share a little fun story
please.
with you actually about food ingredients? So I've done the expat thing for 8 years now. It was my husband's. This is his first time living outside of India. So last year he was starting to get FOMO of everyone on Instagram eating mangoes because Indian mangoes are like way of life. Okay? Like it's just, it is such an important part of like culture, pop culture, Bollywood movies, like, mango is life. So he was getting very like, oh, I don't get to have any mangoes this year. And I was like, I'm gonna find mangoes. So I ended up doing some Google searching and I found an Indian grocery store in Germany that has them. Like, it had on their website like 2 week countdown, we're getting mangoes. And there's all these different varieties of mangoes, and this place was going to have all the varieties. So I put in an order, sent him tons of money, and they were going to do 2 day FedEx shipment. So then I come and I get like all these mangoes, and my husband's eating them and he's like in tears of happiness. Like they're like really good mangoes. Side note, they're actually better than the mangoes you get in India. And these are Indian mangoes because they're export quality.
Oh, crazy.
So we were in India eating Indian mangoes, and we're like, oh, European Indian mangoes are a lot better because they're like export quality. So, anyways, so I got all these mangoes delivered from Germany. Then I'm in the Indians in Czech Republic Facebook group, and some guy posted, like, hey, my wife's a stay at home mom. She's going to be, like, importing mangoes from India. So then I bought a bunch of cases from her. So then before I know it, I have, like, hundreds of mangoes. And it's like, so if you ever come visit me in Prague, I have like a freezer full of mangoes. You get to try some Indian mangoes.
Look, I have a trick because my son, my wife, my son is 6.5,
Okay.
and during his period when he started to eat, he ate a lot of pureed like banana with mango, and it's hard to
Okay.
find. Like you just said, it's hard to find mango here, and besides that, it's hard to find good mango here. So
Yeah.
I'm a
Well,
workaround guy.
I'm gonna keep you. I'm gonna keep you in I'm gonna keep you in mind because it's in March, and like March, April, you can get on the German grocery store email list. You'll
You
know.
have to let me know.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
what I've done, because I don't know if you know, but apples have a special I would say condition, that they, after they are completely raped, after they are completely done, and they are giving out like a gas, which is cooking the other fruits. So basically,
Yeah.
the secret was I bought store mango, which is not the best. It was green. Put it in between apples with apples on top, and it was raped in days, and I had mango. So, but you have to hook me up with
Amazing.
the German store. I haven't found it.
Oh yeah, that's my hookup.
Mariko, we are coming close to the end, and I'm sorry for this because it was an absolutely fabulous conversation. Thank you for that. But I have some things that I want to know from you
Okay.
still before we wrap up this. There are a lot of people who would like to do the steps that you have done. There are a lot of people who would like to move outside of their home country and work in different places. But I think the biggest problem that everyone has is fear. Why they should take this step? Why do you think someone should take this step outside of the comfort zone to experience the experiences that you've went through?
It's a great question. Because you have to choose the type of hard that you want in your life, right? Because it's not going to be easy, but there's also going to be so much that you get out of it. Things that you learn, people that you meet, things that you learn about yourself. Excuse me. There's so much like opportunity out there and amazing experiences, and it's the hardest part is just kind of getting started. You know, there's not much, there's not too much to it. It's like I have friends and, maybe they need to go back to school. Oh, well, I can't go back to school because like school is so expensive. Oh, well, why don't you move to Europe? You can go to school for free in Europe and they give you stipends for living and then you can just concentrate on school. And then it's like oh, well, that seems too complicated. Like that's too hard. And I'm like, but then the other option is just like staying at a job that you're not miserable. You don't have the education, like that whole thing. So it's just,
But it's
you
comfortable.
know,
That's the problem. It's
yeah,
comfortable and
and you will never grow from being comfortable.
correct.
That is like the worst place to be. Like I love it here. Like Prague is great. It's been very like great, but I also know that, one day there's going to be a time that it's like, okay, this is comfortable. So what's going to be the new place?
Why should someone move to Prague?
Right now, if I look out my office window, I'm looking at one of the oldest like forts that used to guard the city. If I look out my terrace right now, I'm looking at the Prague Castle. This building that I was in is like, hundreds of years old. This used to be like a storehouse for the trade on the river. So it's such like a beautiful city surrounded by such like rich history. Every place you look, it's like you could be walking by a building and you'll see a bust on the front. You're like, oh, Mozart used to live there. Einstein used to live there. Just being able to walk everywhere, just being able to like, public transport, just being able to, just walk everywhere in a city that's so beautiful. It's also one of the safest cities in Europe, so that's, nice coming from the US and just, maybe not come during Christmas, like winter. It's a little cold for me, but it's also, you have all the Christmas markets and stuff like that. But yeah, I think, it's a very just kind of one of those like picturesque cities. It doesn't even feel real sometimes.
That's a nice marketing
Just,
for Prague. That's a nice marketing for
yeah.
Prague.
Okay, hi, Czech Tourism. Please give me a job.
If you need a chief marketing officer, take Mariko. She's the one for this,
Yeah, thank you.
and she has the right accent for that. So, what can you have
Yes.
better than an American making marketing for Prague?
Yeah.
I have I promise you, is the less complicated question. But how does happiness look for you, Mariko?
For me, happiness is having freedom to be where I want, to do what I want, to, live a life without limitations. Freedom.
Nice, really nice answer. I would love if before we wrap this up, you give us a book recommendation.
Currently, I'm rereading one of my favorite books, The Odyssey by Homer. And it's all about his journey. And, he was on a very long journey all around the world, having all these different experiences, meeting different people. And even in the worst experiences, he came out a better person from that. So it's, kind of the OG adventurer's tale. But yeah, I'm reading that again. And it's just it's about adventure and creating experiences and having a life that's so wild that, people are writing about it.
Nice. It's a classic one, but an amazing one. So I think
Yeah.
from the thank you for this. I would like a movie recommendation from you.
Um, one of my favorite movies is Pop Star. It's a
I don't know
parody
it.
about it's got Andy Samberg in it. It's got like Simon Cowell, Paul McCartney, every Mariah Carey, every like celebrity musician. It basically makes fun of like pop artists in the US. And it's a very good kind of like, cultural piece in a way. It's hilarious.
Never stop stopping. I just Googled it.
Yes. Yes. The
Okay.
songs are hilarious. The songs will be stuck in your head. It's just like such a fun movie to watch.
I love parodies. I'm one of my favorite movies all time is Not Another Teen Movie. You know it?
Yes, yes. I grew
Also,
up in that generation. Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And my thing lately too is I just don't, I don't spend too much time watching stuff, but I want things that are kind of like light and fun. I don't like, tons of like crazy like dark things, and that's just like a fun movie to watch.
And also, because I'm pretty sure I'm a huge music fan, and I'm pretty sure through your experiences and switching from one country to another, you discover a lot of new music that you would have never heard in the US. Tell us either a song, either an artist.
My my favorite artist has kind of actually stayed the same. Like I haven't, yeah,
But still tell
since my
me,
whole
please.
life. M-Flow. It's a Japanese pop band.
You see? It's something new for me.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I started listening to them in like university like 20 years ago, and apparently they broke up, they came back, they're going to be they're touring Japan. But yeah, just, you know, that's just like one band. It's, like in India, yeah, it was like, some of the Bollywood, like kind of that stuff, but different artists here and there, but that's kind of just like the one band that's been you know,
The
the
constant.
constant.
The constant, yeah.
Yeah. But also I do have to say though, one of the things that I do love is I listen to a lot of Spotify, and they have like some different apps that kind of tracks all the artists that are on your Spotify list. Um, Actually, no. Okay. No, I do have one artist that I like discovered here, and now I am obsessed. I didn't think about that. So on Spotify, it's like if there's a song on your playlist, it will tell you, hey, that artist is coming by. So I have like, let's say any artist from my list is coming to Europe, then I get a little notification. So there's this one band, I have one song on my playlist, and they were coming to town, and I ended up getting tickets, and it was like the best concert of my life, actually. And I like listen to them like nonstop all the time now. And that's Purple Disco Machine.
I don't know them as well. Oh, you gave me only new things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They are fun. It's like we were like dancing for 4 hours. Like the music is fun, and yeah, they're like dance. I don't even know what
They
they
are
are.
actually Germans.
Really?
Yes, I didn't know that.
So
It's a German producer.
so the one song that I had on my playlist was like their most popular
Bit of your heart. Oh,
no.
okay. Get up 24.
Do 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 do.
I have never heard
There
about
anyway,
them.
so okay. Oh yeah. So there's like one of their most popular songs, and the music video is really funny because it's like a dance off between millennials and boomers. So it's a really funny dance, like a really funny music video. And that was the song that was on a playlist. And then I saw them in concert, and it was just like I want to follow them around and see all their concerts. So yeah, that is like one band I discovered, living here, and now I'm hooked.
Mariko, it was an amazing discussion for me. I enjoyed it. I'm extremely happy that I got to know you. Is there something that you wanted to talk about and I didn't approach it?
No, no,
Um,
I'm just like I'm so full right now with happiness. This was just, this was a lot of This is a lot of fun. Thank
The
you.
same for me. Please tell people where they can find you. I will add them. I will add the Instagram account as well in the YouTube
Okay.
show note captions if that's okay for you.
Yeah, no, of course. You can find me on my Instagram at Mariko Presents, and then my website's also marikopresents.com. I have different culinary events coming up in Prague and elsewhere. I offer tours on Get Your Guide. So if you're ever in Prague and you want to have a culinary experience, you can find me on Get Your Guide and some of those platforms. And but yeah, everything's on my website.
Nice. So, I was talking to my wife because we are about 4.5 hours away driving distance from
Okay.
Prague, and we live here since 10 years. And since 10 years, we always talk that we have to go to Prague. And now I know who to contact when I'm there.
100%. Let's make this happen,
Yeah, let's
please.
make this happen. And maybe we get to convince your husband to do it from his perspective as well. Maybe we get to have this chat with him as well.
Okay.
That would be
Okay.
interesting.
Sounds good.
Mariko, thanks a lot. Again, an amazing pleasure. Thank you so much. I wish you an amazing evening, and much appreciated the time that you took for this. See you in the
Thank you
next
so
one.
much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Same
Ciao.
for me. Bye bye.